So if you're a business analyst who is eliciting requirements from a large user base, then this video is for you. In this video, we'll explore a requirements elicitation technique called the survey questionnaire technique, which can be used to elicit requirements from a large user base. This technique becomes very effective if used in the right way, but it becomes relatively ineffective if you do not use it in the correct way. So let's explore what's the pros and cons of this technique. But before we dive in, hit the notification bell and click on the subscribe button so that you can receive many more videos like this. Hi, I'm Sajana Binil. I'm the founder of Business Analysis Hub, the fastest growing community of business analysts here in India. In this video, I'm going to tell you about a requirements elicitation technique known as the survey questionnaire technique. Now, many of you might be aware that survey questionnaire technique is used as a feedback mechanism by several companies to collect feedback and user review of the product that they have sold to their customers. But this technique can also be used to conceptualize a product and design new features for the product even before a product is developed. So let's look at the 3 W's first. What is this technique, when it is used, and why it is used? So what is survey questionnaire? Survey questionnaire is a technique by which you can collect information about customers, products, and even their attitudes in a structured way in a relatively shorter time period. When it is used, this technique should be used by business analysts when they need to elicit requirements or collect information from a larger user base. Why is it used? Whenever a business analyst feels that elicitation techniques like interview, brainstorming, workshop will be relatively ineffective to collect requirements from a larger user base, they should use this technique. You will see when you call a larger audience in brainstorming or workshop sessions, there is a lot of chaos. And people end up judging each other's opinion. And some people don't even freely express their opinion for the fear of being judged. So survey questionnaire becomes a very effective technique to help people express their opinions and give their feedback without having the fear of being judged. So people can independently and freely express their opinions because they know that their opinions will not be judged. It will go directly to the business analyst who will sit there analyzing all the data that they are collecting. Now let us see how we can use this technique to achieve results. Number 1, define a clear objective. So your survey should have a very clearly defined objective. The objective of this survey might be to collect feedback from customers about a product that you sold to them. Or it might be to figure out what kind of challenges they are facing with the existing system that they're using. Or it might be to gather their suggestions on the next version of the product they would like to see on the market. So based on the objective of the survey, you have to formulate questions for the survey. Your second step is to define a proper target audience. If you do not define a proper target audience, you will end up sending the survey to anyone and everyone. And towards the end, you will not have proper data to analyze. You need quality data to understand what kind of users have specific areas of concern regarding your product. It helps you segment your customers and understand the market better. So define a target audience for your survey. Do not send it to everyone. Step number 3, create a question list. Now your survey can have 2 types of questions, close-ended questions and open-ended questions. Close-ended questions are those questions that yield a yes or no as a response. For example, would you like to recommend our product to your friends and family? Yes or no? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much would you rate the performance of our product? Again, a close-ended question. Open-ended questions, on the other hand, require the customer to give you much more detailed information, descriptive information. Like you might have a text box capturing their feedback and suggestions and further improvements for the product. That's an open-ended question. Step number 4, creating a sample group. Now, if your user base is very large, then it is essential for you to create a sample group. Maybe in your requirements elicitation, there are stakeholders participating in from different business units of a bank. You might create a sample group from each business unit. You might not float the survey to everybody in that business unit, but you might create a sample group. So that's further narrowing down your audience. Very, very important from the survey per se, creating sample groups who can give you quality feedback about your product. Step number 5, defining a proper way to distribute the survey and collect the responses. Always discuss with your senior management as to what will be the distribution mechanism of the survey, whether you are going to send the survey as an email to all the employees or the customers, or you're going to put the survey on the company intranet and people are supposed to log into the intranet and complete the survey. Whatever is the distribution mechanism, you have to make it very clear to your senior management, because depending upon the distribution mechanism, you can define how the responses will be collected. In some cases, we have also created printouts of the survey and just circulated it amongst the employees of the customer. So you can pick and choose whatever distribution mechanism you feel is effective in your project. Step number 6, define the timeline for your survey. Very, very important, guys. Never ever leave a survey open without a timeline. Every survey has to be time bounded. Because you will see it's only when you give a timeline to a person will respond back to the survey. When you leave it open to the other person, most of the times you do not get any response. So attach a timeline to it. Let the users know that they have to respond back to this survey in the next 1 week or 2 weeks, whatever is your timeline. And definitely do follow-ups. Before the timeline approaches, before the deadline approaches, follow up with them to ensure that they are completing the survey. In many cases, you might need to take the help of the senior management to actually make the employees complete the survey. So have an email go out from the senior management of the company to encouraging the employees to participate in the survey and complete the survey at the earliest. So in order to get it completed on time, you might require help of the senior management who can actually make it mandatory for the employees to complete it. Your last and final step will be to document the results of the survey. This becomes relatively easy depending upon the kind of questions that you have used on the survey. Now, if you have used more of close-ended questions, then documenting the results and analyzing it becomes relatively easy for a business analyst, because all you need to do is put all the results in an Excel sheet and you can draw bar charts and pie charts showing how many people responded yes to question number 1 and how many responded no to question number 2. So it becomes relatively easy if your survey has used a larger chunk of close-ended questions. But if it is open-ended questions, then it becomes a Herculean task for a business analyst to go through the responses that employees or customers have sent them, and then analyze the data, put it all together, and then present it to the senior management. So I would recommend as a coach that you use more of close-ended questions in a survey rather than open-ended, because documenting the results, analyzing the results, and presenting it to the senior management becomes relatively easy for you. Lastly, let us look at some of the strengths that this technique brings to the table. Well, as you understand, it is a relatively inexpensive technique to be used in projects. Next, it's a technique which is relatively effective for a larger user base, as well as if your stakeholders are geographically dispersed. When you use open-ended questions, survey results might also yield insights and opinions that cannot be easily obtained by other elicitation technique. Because in this technique, people do not have the fear of being judged. They very openly can express their thoughts and opinions. So when you use close-ended questions in a survey, it becomes relatively effective when you can procure quantitative data for analysis. Now let's look at some of the limitations of the technique. What can be the limitation? One of the limitations is if you do not set timelines, if you do not have a proper follow-up mechanism, this technique becomes relatively ineffective. People do not respond to the survey and you will have a relatively low response rates. So you wouldn't even have enough data to do analysis. So it's very vital to use it in the right way. Use of open-ended questions. If your survey is using a lot of open-ended question, it is time consuming for you as a BA to analyze all that information. That's another limitation. Unlike other elicitation technique, this technique might require follow-up with the respondents. So you might have to have follow-up meetings with them to further understand the reason for their concern or the reason why they decided to give a particular response to a question. So it might require follow-up. So it becomes time consuming in that way. So that's all about the survey questionnaire technique. If you have understood what this technique is all about, put in the comment box the 3 takeaways from this video. 3 important points that you have understood about this technique, put it in the comment box right now. In my next video, I'll come up with a new elicitation technique. Happy learning!